One of the common words of our program is passion. Passion transcending in wrestling, but there's passions in other realms too. Speaking of which, there's passions in artistry. You can be an artist in pro wrestling. Your wrestling could be so crisp and fluid and flawless that you'll be considered an artist. You'll hear that from the likes of Chris Jericho and other talents amongst the professional wrestling landscape. But artistry transcends, including in artistry. Imagine being an actual artist, a sketcher, a graphic designer, whatever the proper terminologies are that we'll probably learn along this particular conversation, where you actually get to do mainstream art and artistry for the biggest pro wrestling artistry company in the world, of course, the WWE. We're going to take you now on a journey that transcends into merchandising and all these other things, into passion. Passion being the key gateway to your dreams and goals and to your artistry. The following conversation is scheduled for one fall with someone that I've got to be friendly with in the last year, officially WWE licensed artist, Maz Adams. Maz, welcome to the program.
Thanks, man. I gotta tell you, hearing that from somebody else say that, I just got like chills. So either my apartment is haunted or it's crazy to me. So thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. We met at Wrestle Bash, the first one, 2 years ago, and you know, I kind of knew at some point WWE would pick you up, because I go to cons and conventions all the time, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit different minded with the business, but you see artists all the time, Comic Cons, wrestling conventions, horror cons, all these things. And after a while, they're all great and talented, and similar to what we were just talking about, they all do different things. You kind of have an idea of what WWE would look for in a third-party licensing, deal, whatever it is. And as soon as I saw your stuff, I told Mandy from the Asylum, I was like, can't tell you when. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of when. Can't tell you when, but this guy's going to be affiliated with the WWE in some part, and I'm so happy that it's come true. Is it still shocking, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, I apologize in advance because I'm like emotional right now hearing about it. I always say, like, first came Major League Baseball, and obviously I'm a diehard baseball fan.
Yep.
So that was another thing in a whole other story. That was one big thing. But even before baseball was my love for wrestling, for what was then, I don't know if you have to beep this out, the WWF at the time.
Sure.
So this has been a dream of mine for a long time. I'm a genuine fan. I still am. Whenever it's nearby, I still pay to go. I still buy the merchandise. It's insane. It doesn't feel real. When I got in the prints and I saw it had the sticker on it that says like officially licensed, WWE merchandise, and it had the logo, and it's just like, it feels like a dream. So it's not ever going to sink in 100%. And the baseball hasn't either. Nothing has, because like, I don't want to say lucky, because luck would take me out of the equation. And I have worked so hard for this. I work so hard, but I am so fortunate. And so it's a great responsibility to be in this position. And so I just want to make the most of it, make myself proud, my family proud, make, WWE fans, the WWE universe, and the superstars proud. So yeah, man, it's just, I'm on cloud. I've been floating.
I think you're doing just that, because you're getting responses on Twitter, on Facebook, from the WWE superstars, from the roster, from whether it be wrestlers to referees to announcers to even Cody Rhodes himself. So I think you're doing just that. I'm so thrilled for your success. Like I said, as soon as I saw your work, I was like, it's not if, it's when. And to top it off, you've got an amazing eye with a lens. We're going to get into all these things. I feel as if, especially for you, we should obviously start at the beginning, as I normally do on the program. So instead of asking about your training, when do you get the fever for artistry, for sketching, for drawing? I may mess up the vernacular here, but when do you get a passion for art and artistry?
Hey man, I may mess it up too. I'm all about what people mean behind things, and not how they say them. So you don't have to worry about that with me, man. And you're good with words. But as far as like my love for art, it sounds cliche and made up, but it's true. My earliest memories were me drawing. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I went to a school called PS 115. And I remember in pre-K, my very first year of public school, literally the kids, they had like little like different stations, like the water station, the sand station, stuff like that. They would be playing with whatever, and I'd be sitting at the table with that old yellowish, school paper.
Oh yeah.
And worn out Crayola, markers, and I would just be drawing. I'd be drawing Ninja Turtles. I'd be, drawing whatever. And it was always my happy place to be drawing. I actually hold a pencil incorrectly because I had picked up a pencil when I was so young, and that's just how I developed my strength. So I always loved to draw. I've been so blessed that I never had to question what I want to do with my life. I knew from when I was 4 years old, I want to make a living with this somehow. I didn't know how, but and I was also blessed that I have a family that has always been so supportive and never questioned that.
Now, you're drawing at a young age as part of school and education. In the 90s, that's pretty weird because that was a very like struggling time for New York City education. The funds aren't there, things like that. When did you realize like, oh, I'm kind of getting good at this in your formative years?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the funny thing was I moved from Brooklyn to Central Jersey when I was like 9 years old.
Okay.
But my teachers always knew in PS 115 in Brooklyn that I was a smart kid and that I loved to draw. So they actually let me draw during lessons, whereas if I got caught when I moved to East Brunswick, they'd probably be like, well, pay attention kind of thing. Like they always knew. And
they encourage what you were into. That's great.
Exactly. And because it didn't cost me, I was still top of the class. I was still a very smart guy. I was always a very emotionally mature kid, which made me the topic of or an easy target for other people because they could see like I'm a sensitive kind of quiet guy. Sure. But yeah, I mean, there was always my parents always knew. I always kind of knew because you could see what your peers are doing. I actually remember a specific story. We were reading, I think in first grade, the BFG by Roald Dahl, The Big Friendly Giant.
Yeah.
And we had like some project in class, and I drew him like, and it looked just like the cover. I like copied the cover, whatever the drawing by Roald Dahl was, and like every single person in my class, I remember came up to me and they're like, "Hey, can you draw it for me for my project?" Like, so I ended up drawing like the BFG for like everybody. And it was all basically me. But yeah, and then I remember one year the teacher like kept me during lunch, and there was like some kind of test that they used back in the day where they could assess your drawing level.
Oh yeah.
She had me do that and like sent it away, and it, I don't remember what it came back at the time. I might've been like 7 and it came back like a 16-year-old drawing, something, whatever. But to me,
oh wow,
yeah, that's never been how I measure. I always measure myself against myself. I just always want to grow as an artist. If I look at stuff I did a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh geez, like, ashamed.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, that's not, you're always like looking for the room of improvement. And that kind of leads me into my next question and statement.
Yeah.
Your journey doesn't seem to be that of a prodigy or a natural. Yours is through practitioner. Like you knew, like, I'm good at it, but I can get better. It wasn't like you're drawing, 16 chapels off rip. You're like, oh, I'm good and I want to get better. And that's still with you, obviously. Yes.
Oh, 100%. And I think the thing is, it might be a misconception because you look at some of the greats like Michelangelo, Leonardo, they did the same thing I'm doing, man. I'm not comparing myself to them at all, but people.
And we mean the artists, not the turtles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on, it could be the turtles too, man. They were just little turtles before the ooze got them. Yeah, you're hitting on all my favorite things. But so they all kind of like had to start somewhere. It's just that now that there's, that's history. We just know them for what they were. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the day that you want to stop learning and stop growing as an artist, you should just quit. There's always something you can learn. There's always a way you can evolve. You can get inspired by other people, learn new techniques, learn new mediums. So yeah, man, that's the fun in it. I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I want to keep it fresh.
Same thing with me on the indie circuit. You have to evolve, you have to adapt, and you have to call for different feds. You have to call for different talents. It's tough to do in the tri-state because there's at least 20 or 30 guys that work from Connecticut, New Hampshire, all the way down to Virginia. So I'm constantly looking for new places to work. So I totally get that because I don't want to be complacent either. And that's a common theme here on the podcast. When did you see yourself hitting the next level? High school? Did you go to college? Because now you're in the 6th grade and you're being mistaken for someone 5 or 6 years older than you at your artist skill. When did you excel next? Like, oh man, not for nothing. I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to take every opportunity there was to better myself. I was very blessed, and one of the reasons that we moved to East Brunswick was because of the school system. So
Sure.
I was very blessed in the fact that there were a lot of different art classes I could take in high school. I took every art class I could, and even before that, when I was still living in Brooklyn, they had something called like it was like a basically like a camp, but it was like a kid college where you could pick different courses for camp. So like I
Oh,
had
sure.
done
Yeah.
yeah, so I had done a drawing class, and it's not that I did that to learn. It's just because I love to draw so much that if I could do it, it's one thing to sit down at the table, which I did all the time, and just sketch whatever you want. But it's another thing when you have a teacher guiding you to be like, this is what we're going to do today. And it's that challenge of doing something. If it was up to me, like as a kid, I would just draw like Batman or Yoda all day a million times. But,
Right.
then I don't grow. I could draw a good Batman. I could draw a great Yoda. But, so I just think that I always knew like the goal originally was to work in the comic industry, as we were talking before. I love Batman. That was my dream. So there was a school that advertised all the time in comic books, the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphic Art, which for those that may not know, the Kuberts are like a royal family, like the Rhodes or the Von Erichs, to wrestling, they're like that in comics. Joe Kubert is a legend. He had been working in the industry since he was like a teenager. He did pass away many years ago, but he was a beast. And then two of his sons, Adam and Andy, are both legends.
Adam and Andy are the names that I know from the Kuberts. I didn't know
Yeah.
about the dad. Okay.
Yeah, so Joe was just, oh man, he was like everybody's grandpa. He was the nicest, sweetest guy, and I got lucky because, one of the perks of going to school is that you're taught by all working professionals. So Adam
Sure.
taught first year, Andy, who was one of my favorite artists of all time, taught second year, and then Joe taught third year. So like to get one-on-one time with these people critiquing your art, they put tracing paper over it and show you how they would correct things. I mean, that was invaluable. So, I always envisioned myself getting into comics. And I still, when we get into talking about my art specifically, it's still very comic inspired, and that I pride myself in line work and hatching and cross hatching.
Yeah.
But like 6 years ago or so, I unexpectedly took this turn towards like going from comic art and horror art, which I used to do a lot of conventions, to sports, and like it's another love of mine, baseball, wrestling. And they kind of cross paths, and from that moment on, it's like everything kind of just made sense and took off. And
it's funny you say that, because there's two points that I get out of that. Number one, we talked about it before we launched this, but Rob Schamberg's art was one thing. Yours is different. One of the reasons, and I love Rob, and I have a lot of his stuff. One of the reasons I like your art is because it's kind of like WWE graphic novel art. You can see some of the Batman in that. You can see some of the darkness. You're looking at it. I'm not saying that Rob didn't do this, but it's obviously a different style compared to yours. But you see the influences that you just mentioned in your work.
Yeah,
and I love that, especially with, and it's in the back, the Stone Cold piece and the Rhea Ripley pieces. You see a lot of that.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, one of the things as an artist that you're always trying to find is what's my identity, what's my style, right? And they always tell you your style is what's going to happen naturally. You can't force it. And if you look at stuff I did from school from when I was younger, it's totally different. But and now it's almost like I can't not draw this way. It's people will compliment me or whoever and be like, "Oh, you have such a talented hand." It's like it's not my hand, it's my brain. And anybody who draws, their talent is in their mind. If God forbid, that's why you get people that can draw with their feet, like if they've had an accident or something.
Yeah.
Because it's the mind, it's just the muscle coordination, and it's so automatic. And like I didn't personally sit down and with a paper and write down ideas and go, oh yeah, I'm gonna do comic book looking. It's just like, this is how I express what's inside of me. This is the filter through which I see things. And I also don't try to cater to anybody else. I do what I enjoy, and the way I've always looked at it is, this is my passion. I feel so fortunate to do this, and I do it for the enjoyment. And if anybody else likes what I do, that's just an added bonus. So all the positive comments I get, the people messaging me, following me, like looking up to me, it's incredible. And I just, I could never have, you hope for stuff like this one day, that you can make a difference with your art and get to do the things you love and enjoy, but you never really think this stuff's going to happen.
Right.
But I've just always been such a driven person where I'll always find a way to get whatever my dream is, and you have to work for it. But
you have to work for it. The other thing that I absorbed from your education that I love is that you didn't say, I'm going to go to school and get a marketing degree and then major in artistry. You didn't go to say FIT. You were like, no, this is it. This is the school that does it. And you went at it. And with your education, not too dissimilar to NXT, you're around these real players, and you're kind of like, you got like your little Terry Taylor, your Shawn Michaels, you're learning from the masters, and you're so grateful for how invaluable that was. And I love that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing too was that school has one of the highest dropout rates the first year, because people people would assume it's like 25% or something. People would assume that, oh, you love to draw, so why would you want to? It was literally 5 days a week, all day, 8-hour days or whatever it was. You'd have 2 different classes every day, so you'd have 10 assignments a week, and they weren't like sketch a face. Some of them were like you have to pencil 3 pages, ink 3 pages, letter 3 pages, color 3 pages, and that's like one class. So it really taught me the work ethic, because one of the things they preached, because we also learned the business of art, is if you can't reach a deadline, you're no good. It only takes missing one deadline. They'll choose. There's so many people waiting for a shot. And the first year, I struggled, because a lot of what we had to do was not fun stuff to draw. If, like I said, if it was up to me, I'd be drawing Batman all day. But most of comic art is not Batman. It's drawing what's in the background and stuff like that. And a lot of people get a rude awakening, and I was one of them. So I ended up
run from it. That's key.
No.
Like you were like, oh, this is the business, and I got to get with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, first year I didn't even finish all my assignments, but they gave me the opportunity to make them up over the summer. So I spent all summer. I didn't get time off. I did it, and from that point on, never happened again. And so I credit the school so much with that, because that's the most important thing. It literally was like a boot camp for artists.
And you completed your studies. You weren't one of those dropouts. You finished it.
No, I graduated. It was a 3-year school. I went from 2007. I graduated in 2010. And even like what we're talking about before, like I still, even though I'm doing this, I still work a regular job. I do this in addition to it.
Right.
So, I mean, I literally burned the candle. Like my dad made a comment to me. We went away to Cooperstown 2 weekends ago, and he had turned to me and he had said something to me that was probably the most meaningful, like emotional thing he ever said to me. And he said to me, he goes, "You're the hardest working man I know," which is crazy, because growing up, not for a bad reason, but my dad wasn't around a lot when I was a kid because he was working. He was always working. So for him to say that to me, meant a lot to me. It was deeper than what those just those words.
It's crazy, because he's watching you from another light, and your work is transcending to him in a way that his did to you. So that's a touching moment, and I could really respect and admire that. Because I know you guys have a great relationship. You talk about your dad all the time on socials. Post 2010, you finish your courses, you get your 3 years, you get this incredible education. What happens after?
Reality hits me in the face, man. Really? Yeah, of course. There are so many people that are talented artists. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the best artist. And I don't necessarily ever want to be. I mean, there's always a bigger fish. They, they say art is subjective, but there are certain things you can, compare one person to another.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. It's tough to find work. Most of the work out there is freelance.
Yep.
When you work freelance, you don't have health insurance. There's a lot of
very hand to mouth.
Yeah. So there was actually a point several years after where my dad had a talk with me, and he's like, have you considered doing something else? And, I said, for me, it was hard to accept that, because I felt like I'd be giving up on my dreams. But the good thing about being an artist is you can always do that with whatever else you're doing. You just have to find the time. And the other good part of it is, if I did have another job, I could be pickier with the projects that I take on. So I don't have to draw stuff that I hate. I can draw whatever I want. So I ended up going back to school for medical assisting. And really? I had worked, I had worked in cardiology for like almost 10 years. And I had excelled at that. And everybody was always pushing me to go back to school. You got to go be a doctor. You got to go be an NP or a PA. But I wasn't willing to do that much, because I don't want to give up even more time. The art has always been number one, and it will always be a struggle to find the time. And I'm probably at the point where if I wanted to take the plunge, it would still be taking a risk, but I'm in the best position now where if I wanted to be like, no, I'm just going to devote my time, but you know, I have more than myself to think about. So
Right.
I'm happy doing what I'm doing now, making things balance out the best I can. And you know, I'm a big believer in the fact that, like, you know, if somebody doesn't text you back because they're busy or whatever, like, we make time for the things that are important to us.
Yes.
I will always find time for the people I care about. I will always find time to get my work done. Because people are always like, how do you get it done? I'm like, because I have to. Because
it's and that resonates with me because, you know, you were aware, like, okay, I don't want to give up my passion, but I know that it's not a main income.
Yeah.
And then you're aware of, okay, I could take this crapshoot and it might pay off even for 3-6 months a year, but I'm also aware enough to say it may hit a plateau. And it's very much the same in the indies. You know, I didn't quit any of my day jobs. I was able to balance both. And so all of that just hits me because it's the same thing. You know, ultimately we joke about it, and some guys say it in the sense of a place of bitterness, but wrestlers, even sometimes when they get signed to a WWE and AEW, they're independent contractors. So you've got to get that cash flow, and then everything else is extra after the fact. Is true, because I know as an announcer, I'd have less of a chance of living off wrestling with no TV job than if I was to, you know, do that full time, than if I was to have a day job Monday through Friday and then do the wrestling on the weekend. So I could certainly resonate with your awareness of your industry, because you have to be.
Oh yeah, it's about, you know, like, it's one thing to follow your dreams, which I agree with. I've never not followed my dreams. I've never not done everything I can to get to where I want to be, but I also want to be smart, especially if you're married or you have kids, there's other people to think about. So you have to be realistic. And, you know, the funny thing was, I had always agreed with my parents. We made like a deal. It was more so with my dad, because my mom was my biggest fan. She adored me. And so my dad, you know, I had told him, I'll go to community college first. I'll get an associate's degree in fine art. And then once I do that, I've proven that I can do it, I'll go to the Kubert School.
Okay.
I went, and I was, you know, an 18, 19-year-old kid. I had, you know, the hoity-toityest, you know, fine art bullshit Dada art teacher. And I was like, I love comics, and they were like, this is not art, you know. And I was like, screw these people. So
I hate that. I hate that.
After a year, I don't even know if my dad knows this, like, I stopped going, and I would just go hang out with my mom, and my dad thought I was still going to school. So, and I told him, I was like, listen, man, like, comic art, this is the school, the Kubert School is a school I always wanted to go to since like 7th grade. I was like, just let me do it and I'll do it. And he gave in to his credit. And, you know, we were having the conversation the other day. I'm like, I think you've got a return on your investment. Like, they sell my art in Yankee Stadium. I've gotten you on the field. You've gotten photos with Don Manley on the field. You've been like,
I think we're pretty square, Dad.
Yeah. I was like, come on, man. Like, because we were in Cooperstown last week, and he's like looking for my art. I'm like, dude, why are you looking for my art? He's like, I want to see it in Cooper. I'm like, it's in Yankee Stadium. Like, that's to me, that's even cooler. So, I was lucky. Things didn't always go as planned, but such is life, right?
I like that, because I've also had, I won't share the stories because it's not about me, it's about you. But I've also had those detractors in my education, in my formative years, where they're like, what you're into is not real. What you're into is not, you know, and for you to just bounce back and really, you know, go through it and slam dunk it in their face. Because you know, it's like, you know, you go and you're trying to learn from these people, and they're the ones putting you down.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I've had naysayers my whole life. Everybody does, you know. Like, I'm living my life for me. I'm not trying to be like, you know, in your face. To me, the best victory is my happiness. Like, I mean, it's been so crazy. So, yeah, I mean, I do it for the people that support me, not for the people that don't.
Yeah, that's what it is. At the end of the day, I don't know if it was I feel bad saying it's either Kobe or LeBron, and then it was John Cena that recited it. It was like, there's 1 million people that like me, and there's 10 million that don't like me. I'm worried about the 1 million that like me. Everything else after that is extra, or I don't care. Exactly. You know, something to that effect. And that's kind of how I try to live my life. You're always going to get criticisms, you know, it's how you handle it and face it. And, you know, you either suck it up or absorb it and then go on. And you definitely kept going on. So then real quick, when does the photography come into play? Is that something that also was kind of always there, or do you pick that up post art school?
You know, like when you want to text somebody and you've been meaning to text them, but then it's like a year goes by and then you finally text them.
Yeah.
It's like that photography. It's always something I wanted to do, but I never did it
Okay.
until about 2019 when I was like, I started. It was around the time I really started going to a lot of baseball games. Like growing up, I went to games, but I didn't. I mean, I've always been a Yankee fan. I've always gone to the stadium, but it was around the time I started like on a regular basis going to the stadium where I was like, I want a camera. I want to
Okay.
learn. And I taught myself. I went on YouTube, which is a great tool. It could be a great tool. It could be a lot of things, but you know, I learned all the different settings on cameras, how they affect each other. I learned that part of it because to me, when I'm walking and looking at things, I'm always seeing it through the eye of a composition of an artist. That's
Okay.
half the battle, right? There's two things to being a photographer. There's two parts. There's the compositional artistic aspect, and then there's the technical aspect. Half of that I already kind of had in the bag, you know, I think, as being an artist. I have that artist's eye or whatever you want to call it. It was
Yeah.
just learning the technical aspects, learning what an ISO is or an ISO, learning what an f-stop means, and learning what speed is and what zooming in does to light in a like all these little things. So
Yeah.
I
There's
just
many intricacies in that. Sure.
exactly. So like the funny thing is, you know, I'll get a lot of people asking me, what camera did you take that picture with? You know, and it's important for people to understand that yes, of course, you want to have a good camera, but the camera is not going to get the shot. You have to know to get the most out of that camera and what you
Yep.
can do and what you can't do. I'm always changing settings. Like when I'm shooting wrestling or shooting baseball, as you know, if like during the main event of a house show, the lights go off, I can't shoot as fast. I know this, or
Yeah.
or the photos are going to get grainier because this is all jargon, gibberish, whatever to people that don't take photography or do photography. You know, same thing with baseball. If it starts getting dark out, I can't shoot as fast anymore. So then I have to decide, do I want to get shots that are faster and grainier, or do I want to get shots that are blurrier but less grain? So it's like, you know, it was a lot to learn. It is overwhelming at first, but once you do it, and then I never could have expected to see the reactions that the stuff has gotten. Like,
well, hold on.
crazy.
You had to be aware of how awesome your photos were because I didn't see anything until WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing was, for those of you unaware, Maz was at WrestleMania 40, got to do both nights, got incredible photos of the entire show, both nights. Yeah. I'm not going to say, oh, his photos of Cody. No, all his photos were amazing. I know it sounds like something I'm saying because he's on the show. Go on his Facebook, look at his photos. Don't steal his stuff like people did. But his photos were superb. And dude, you had to know how great those pictures were.
Well, again, you know, I judge for myself. So like when I take a shot, I feel bad whoever goes to me because I'm always elbowing them and showing them like, oh God. But the thing is, when you look at a little screen, sometimes you think you got the shot, but then when I come home and I upload them, it was like blurring. I'm like, oh crap, I missed it. Or, you know what I mean? But
Apter went through that too. If you haven't read Bill Apter's book,
yeah,
there's many a story, especially in those early 70s when he actually didn't have a nice camera and
film. You couldn't look at it after you shot
it. And people don't realize that film is alive on top of that.
Yeah.
You know, he swears that he got the money shot, the cover shot, you know, for those early PWIs, and then he'd print it out in the darkroom and it'd be like, son of a
and the funny thing is you'd think like, well, dude, you get like, if you, again, I'm not an arrogant person. I'm not trying to toot my horn. Yes, I am confident. I do think I'm very good at what I do. I just didn't realize that other people felt the same way is what I should say. That like, because it runs the gamut. You get people that are just like, it's a photo. You press the button. And then you get people that are like, holy crap, that's a piece of art, the lighting and this and that.
I think also the event in question, like you were at, it's said every year, but this was the biggest WrestleMania of all time. So I think the magnitude of the event, the quality of your photos, it was the perfect recipe for awareness of you and your name and your developing brand.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, what I tell people when I want to learn, because I love teaching people, whether it's art or photography, I love to teach, I love to help people, because we all get to where we're getting at by being nice and helping other people. You're never too big or too small for that. It's all about anticipation and knowing your subject. I purposely got 2 different seats for WrestleMania. I wanted a different view night 1 than night 2. I wanted to get Cody.
Oh, that's pretty smart. I
wanted to get Cody doing his whoa with the pyros behind him one night, and then the other night, you know, I wanted to be in another position to get other things. Now, some things you can predict, some things you can't. I know which post Orton goes to do his pose. I know which post LA Knight goes to. I know how to tell when an RKO is coming for the most part, what moves Brandy might do. So there's certain things about knowing the subjects that help. Granted, when The Rock is going to do a rock bottom, I don't know what side of the ring he's going to be on necessarily. You know what side is the hard cam side, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Outside of the people's elbow, you don't know what else is going to happen.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, at Mania, you don't know how where the pyros are necessarily going to be. It's not a standard setup. So you shoot, you try to prepare to get whatever you can in the shot. I didn't get everything. And like we were saying before, like you'd be like, oh, you get hundreds of shots. Why would you be frustrated? Because you still want that one shot. You're like, oh, you know, and it's the same way in art. I could do a beautiful piece that everybody loves. And if I did something in it that I don't like or that I think is a mistake, that's all I'll see in that piece. So no matter what you do in life, it's always about knowing your subject, being prepared and learning.
And when you go to bat, you know you're not going to get 10 home runs. So you're trying to get at least the one.
Yeah. And a good example of that too is like, especially when I first started shooting, it would be like, all right, I'd move to like, let's say there's a runner on first. You know, I would hope that there'd be a double play, but I'm not sitting at second base. You learn that you pick whatever you want to shoot and you wait for that. And that's not something somebody told me. It's just, it came to me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is, so you just sit on that second base and you just wait and hope that that guy hits in the double play. And when you do, you're going to be in the best position to get that shot. You always, it's like being a quarterback, right? They teach you, you're supposed to, the receiver's supposed to know the routes. You're supposed to throw to where they're going to be at the end of the route, not where they are right then.
Right.
Same thing with photography. You want to be set up where it's going to happen rather than, you know, trailing behind and trying to follow. Now the camera's moving, it's going to be blurry. The person's moving, it's going to be, so it's like.
Yeah, it's become a telltale sign, but like when a guy when a guy is on the outside of the ring in a multi and he's there, you know, it's super obvious, but he's there waiting for, unfortunately, his next spot. But in true reality, he's supposed to be ready to pick up the next moment. So it's that same thing. What's one commonality? And I'm so glad I get to ask you this because you're literally in both realms. What's one commonality between the photography and the actual drawing? Is there one? Is there something that, even if it's something you've developed, what's one thing that's kind of one and the same?
So what's interesting is the difference. Like to me, for the most part, as an artist, I'm creating a composition, and as a photographer, I'm taking what's there and making a composition out of it or getting the angle. And I know that's not what you asked, but it's always funny to me. Shooting something like baseball or shooting something like wrestling is tough because if I'm in the seat, I'm only getting one angle. You know what I mean? Like all those shots, I have to make a lot of things. I have to make a lot of interesting shots, but I can't really move. So I only have one vantage point. So it's a matter of like finding the moments to do it. Now, as far as the commonality, the principles are the same, right? If you want to get somebody's eye to go to a certain point, there are certain things you learn as an artist that will carry over into a photo. You know, to get somebody's attention, there's different principles. So you can get like either the area with the greatest contrast. You could get like an area where there's like negative space, and then all of a sudden there's the most going on there. You could get the area of the most, the highest saturation or point of color. So there's like different things you learn there that you can then carry over. And, you know, another conversation I had with somebody the other day, it was like, they asked me if I edited a photo, and I was like, yeah, I edit every photo. Now, if you saw the original, he's like, well, you should be able to take it out of the camera. I'm like, yeah, you could, and you would never know the difference, and you'd still think it's a great photo. But maybe sometimes there's like a little, maybe somebody's pinky is in the corner, and I'm like, it would look so much cleaner if it's just solid black, and I just crop a little around it, right? Or maybe, you know, somebody like an area would, the person's face would pop more if behind them was just a little bit darker. You know, so you're not bastardizing the photo to where it's like neon and
you're enhancing and hopefully perfecting it. Sure.
Yeah. And that's where it also crosses over to art, because there are times I draw something and I'm like, this would look better if this color, like this popped. Or I know, and I have many examples of that, even with the WWE stuff, where along the way I made changes to it because for the sake of like, this will look better. Even if it's not necessarily the way I want it to be, I know that it's going to work better as a piece.
It's funny because obviously, and this may seem like a silly thing to say because it's so obvious, but when you're doing the photography, you're trying to capture an environment that you're obviously not in control in. Whereas when you're drawing it, it's the environment you create.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things that you think that, but until you hear it from an artist, you're like, oh, well, that's all the sense in the world.
Well, put it this way. What if I had to draw a picture, but I can only have one vantage point in the picture? When I'm drawing, I'm the one holding the camera, so to speak, and I can move that camera wherever angle I want, right? And it doesn't even have to be one angle. It could be multiple angles.
Sure.
When I'm taking a photo, I got one spot. My butt is in that seat. Like, to me, the best compliment people give me is they're like, oh, man, how did you get credentials for WWE to shoot? I'm like, I sat in my seat. I paid. I shot those as a fan. Yeah. I'm allowed to bring a camera without it. Like, that's not even my DSLR, my pro camera. I'm like, I just shot. I followed the rules. I brought the camera I was allowed to bring. And, like, people never see the stuff that messes up. So they don't see the people that every time, somebody comes out they go, ah, and then all of a sudden I got an arm in my photo. You don't see those photos, but I'm always shooting around people. I was in the second row at SmackDown a few weeks ago, and I had a guy that was about 6'5" sitting in front of me. In the front row, I was literally the second row floor. He was the very first row, and he kept standing up. And I'm like, the dude's 6 foot, like, he had to be 6'5". I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But lost a lot of shots there, but you won't know that. You'll just see the good ones.
It's funny. So. That was part of why in the old roll camera days and the shutter cams, that was part of why I stopped taking photos at events, pre-cell phones, because you can't, the environment around you. And I will tell I had a kid, I was at a Raw at the Garden. It was the Raw after SummerSlam 02, right? And my mom takes me, and I'm sitting next to a kid and his mom, and anybody would come out and this kid would wow out. I mean, I'm like 12 or whatever. He's like 6, 7. And it got to the point where I stopped taking photos because he was knocking the camera out of my hands.
Yeah.
So but again, I can only imagine the struggles you go through. And I had that one, and that was like my plateau. I never bought a camera after that.
I'm a curmudgeon. And I think the thing is why it's hard for me to understand, like, oh, they're just kids. It's because, like, I was never like that as a kid. I was a quiet, well-behaved kid. I don't want to generalize, but today I don't know if it's the parents aren't as involved, but kids just do things today, say things today. They're just, I can never, I would love to be a parent. Hopefully I still have the chance, but I would never allow my kids to act in the way that they do.
It's such a cliche, but you see that and you're like, I didn't do that shit when I was there.
I didn't,
or I couldn't get away with it,
Yeah, exactly. My parents would never let me do that. But look, people can have fun. I understand that, because you get it all the time. People are like, how can you enjoy it or watch it if you're taking pictures all the time? And it's like, actually, I have to know what's going on even more than you do if I want to be good at what I do. So my enjoyment is in taking pictures. I love having these memories. You know what I mean? So,
well, that's the same. It's like, well, how could you enjoy the show if you're calling the action? I got the best seat in the house.
Yeah.
I get to help these guys tell their stories and facilitate as such. And it's
a different experience.
I just happen to be working, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a different experience. It's a different vantage point. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and bottom line is, if you're paying or you're doing like, it's your life. If you don't have to explain yourself to anybody else. If they find that that's intrusive to them, as long as I'm not ruining anybody else's experience, which I never do. I'm always sure, I'll always tell people who are sitting next to me, if at any point I accidentally cross over, whatever, please let me know, or put your, like, whatever, So it's all about.
Well, some people can't go to a show and enjoy it without it being like this.
Yeah.
They don't know how to. There are other ways, and the same way you stand and you cheer and you're active. Well, there's some people that are just like, well, you're working. How are you enjoying? Oh, trust me, I'm enjoying it. And that you realize. Here's one, because I feel I'm getting to know you and I'm really enjoying this. Do you feel like there's people that just don't? There's people that are not passionate or don't have anything they're into, so they don't get it when you're into it at a level of any kind.
Of course. I mean, I was having this conversation with somebody at work the other day. I'm the type of person that if I'm into something, I go balls to the wall. I'm like upper echelon, like 0.1% of a fandom of that, right? So if I love something, I'm going all in. I don't half-ass anything in life in general. So yeah, I mean, there are people like that don't get certain things I'm into or might not understand it, but it's not for them to have to get or understand. I mean, wrestling's been going on forever. It's not stopping anytime soon. You get the usual stuff. It's fake. It's like, well, movies are fake and wrestling is not fake, right? Predetermined. It's
right.
Even if you take out the actual performing, the fact that these men and women are flying home and back and then driving cars for hours, that alone is exhausting. You think when you go on a vacation and you go to one flight, let alone the fact that they're bumping every night and they're doing the meet and greets and like, it's crazy. The life itself, I couldn't even imagine. It's crazy. And then on top of it, the physicality. So, I was into wrestling since I was 4 years old. I fell in love with it. I had a lot of friends that were into it. They grew out of it. I never grew out of it. I grew more in love with it. And I don't feel sorry. I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. A lot of people love it, but you know, I love it. So you don't have to like it. I love it. It's one of the
Right.
greatest. You know,
It's
I've been to so
it's
many events, and wrestling, especially, you know, I'm a WWE guy through and through. Not just because I'm doing stuff for them, but that was my dream. I've always been a WWE guy. They put on the best shows. Like they get it.
yeah, it's crazy because there's just people that for whatever reason they can't live their life without, you know, tearing yours down, right? You know, they have to go out of their way and say, oh, you know, it's fake, right? Well, you know, my disbelief is suspended, so you know, why do you have to go out of your way to say and do that? You know, because if I lift somebody up 8 feet above the air and slam them on their own body weight, it ain't gonna be fake no more. You
Yeah.
know.
And then especially what we know behind the scenes about what they go through with the independent contract, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just because of the nature of the beast, you know, a lot of them unfortunately have shortened lives for one reason or another. So they're, you know, having time away from their family. They're in pain. They're afraid if they're hurt to say anything because they don't want to lose their spot or their momentum. You know, it's rough. So I have so much respect for these men and women. It's just, you know, I know that dream. If I was, you know, a foot taller, maybe that's the road I would have gone down because I love it so much. So I just feel lucky that I have anything to do with it. You know,
Yeah.
I'll just keep saying it's nuts. It's crazy, man.
So when I meet you at Wrestle Bash, the MLB comes to you first, right?
Yeah. So technically, I got all this happened through Fanatics.
Okay, because I'm trying to get to, because I know it's Fanatics, MLB,
Yeah.
WWE, but were you hitting some stride before getting these major brands?
Yeah, so I mean, I had been doing stuff for Topps. I had done trading cards for Topps. I had done other, you know, company trading cards, sketch cards. For those who are, you know, memorabilia collectors, I had been featured in Beckett Magazine, which is like the magazine for sports cards.
Yeah, sports and grading, sure.
Yeah. I've done, like, you know, there was a bunch of stuff along the way. But then I got involved with Fanatics, which, you know, this is a story of persistence and perseverance. I always say to people, you have to learn not to take no for an answer, but take it as a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
The difference that separates people like me who have been able to do certain things, and I'm still going. I'm not at the end of my story. I'm not sitting in a, you know, on my high horse or anything like that. But the difference is being able to take no and say, okay, well, I'm not giving up. I'm going to find another way. Because these same companies that I'm working for, Fanatics, I had originally emailed them years before and I was rejected.
Right.
Topps, I couldn't even get an email back from. So the difference that separates people from getting it and not getting it, or there are certain people that go, oh, woe is me. Okay, I'm not good enough. I'll just give up. I'm never going to try again. But things work out, you know. So much in life is what you make of it and taking action. But then, you know, there is some divine intervention, or just sometimes things work out. So I ended up getting connected with a guy at Fanatics who wanted to work with me. You know, we had said we were going to do MLB. You know, we were doing one piece and seeing what went from there. There were no promises after that, and things worked out. And, you know, since then we've been working together. And then when I heard that they got the WWE license, you know, my heart, I was like, I felt so anxious. I'm like, I talked to my art director and I said, please, if there's ever any chance of doing anything for WWE, I was like, MLB is great and I love it. And I'm so grateful because I'm a baseball fanatic. My whole office is like 95% baseball in their stuff. I was like, if there's ever a shot, please consider me. And it was, he had basically told me, like, you know, we'll see what happens. Like right now there's a lot, because it is logistically, there's a lot to go through because Fanatics is handling stuff for WWE. They're still kind of trying to, you know, work together. I don't. Yeah,
it's a very, so real quick, it's a very new partnership. It has hit tremendous strides. I know that from what I've heard, one of the best WWE fan experiences was the new concept of WWE World that launched for the 40th anniversary of WrestleMania, because Access for a while was either really, really great or something else. I heard that Fanatics took that challenge to the new heights. I think making it a WWE Comic-Con hybrid was genius. So yeah, it's still a new partnership. So I can totally understand that stuff and understand how from their aspect, it's like, hey, we hear you, but maybe not right now. So yeah.
Yeah. So there was a time where it looked like it was going to happen. I cried. And then things kind of were still in the works, so time went by, and then finally I got told, like, we're doing it. And again, I cried. Yeah, I mean, I've been, I had the art finished, and we were sitting on it for a while, waiting for the time to release it.
So you were tasked. So is it in the sense of, and you don't have to give out too much, but is it,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to give you a try? Did you get to pick the superstars, or did they tell you?
So, they said we're going to start with 4. There's never, again, and this is how I am in life, there's never any promises. You try to make the most of every opportunity. My art director, I give him all the credit in the world. He knew I was a genuine fan, and that gives me a different perspective too, because not everybody who draws the subject is a fan of it. And just like,
and not everybody appreciates fandom, even in the business sector.
Exactly. And, just like photography, we were talking about knowing the subject, it's the same with wrestling. These pieces, some more than others, like the Orton, have little Easter eggs in them that people that are fans might get the reference, but other people might not. So like me, I'm a die-hard wrestling fan my whole life, like legit. Like I'm a savant. I'm like a Rain Man when it comes to WWE, WWF.
I love that. Love that.
But so yeah, to answer your question, finally, they gave me the first 4 subjects, and it rightfully so, it's a business, so we try to do people that are popular, that sell. And I mean, I'm not gonna complain. I grew up, I had a closet full of Stone Cold Steve Austin t-shirts. I wanted to meet the guy as a kid. He was my hero. And now I have a freaking officially licensed piece. Like I said, all of this is a dream. Like I can't even put into words. So yeah, we did those 4. We were going to see how it goes. And yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I would keep an eye out. I mean, I would highly recommend to anybody that is even thinking about picking these up, I would suggest you pick them up.
Well, I know that the big talk the other day was that the Austin completely sold out, and then one popped back up, right?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't even know if it's really still up anymore or what. But
well, believe it or not, I just checked, and it is back up, because when I went, I was like, oh, let me try to get the last one. It flew back out, but the 2 that have the big almost gone is the Rhea and the Austin artist signed ones.
Yeah.
They're really popular. I have people that are not even in figure groups like Asylum, like we are, and they buy them. And I feel, I don't want to be that guy, but they're like, oh, this is so cool. I got the number 1 of whatever. And the other day on my timeline, somebody got number 1, and another guy went into the comments and was like, oh, I have 25.
Yeah, I'll trade you. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So seeing that where there's no affiliation, no commonalities, where you can't see it, but I do, is pretty cool to have you on my timeline. I really love, aside from your humility for this, how much it, just how much it means to you, I guess, still in the vein of humility. And, you're so forthright with like, hey man, I'm just blessed to be able to do this.
Yeah. I'm still like, I look like I'm turning red. I'm getting emotional because like, it kills me when I see like, whether it's a wrestler or an athlete, and they're like, I grew up a fan. And then you hear like these horror stories. Like I'm not singling anybody out in particular.
Sure.
Just celebrities when they're like, oh, I was a fan. And then you hear that they're like the meanest people. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not comparing myself to a celebrity, but I've gotten, the cool thing is like, I've had family support me. I've had friends support me. I've had people in the wrestling communities, but then I've had random people reach out to me on social media who are like floored that I've given them the time of day. And I'm like, dude, I'm just a person. Yeah. Like I am you. I'm just doing this. Like, and I'm not just saying that to try to sound like a nice guy. Like I cannot put into words. I will never be able to articulate how grateful I am for any of this. And that, like I said, I'm never too busy for anybody to show appreciation. I am just a person. I'm just a regular guy. But this is something I'll never forget, and I'm going to cherish this forever. And I hope it keeps going. And that's why I really hope people buy it, my work, because there are so many wrestlers I want to draw. I don't think I'm done yet. I'm not going to speak out of turn or anything to jeopardize anything, but I would say that if you're a completionist and you do like my work, I would pick these up as soon as you can. I'm not just saying that to sell things. I don't have a horse in the race other than I want to keep doing this. Because honestly, and I don't want them to hear this, if I had to do it for free, I would do it for free, because there are a few things in life I would say that with, but with WWE, I can say it honestly. I still want to get paid. I have bills to pay, but if it came down to it and they're like, yeah, we can't pay you, I'd be like, don't worry about it. Like, so yeah, I mean, I just hope, like you said, I don't think people realize like how much work went into them. Like the Austin piece, there's so much fine hatching in there that it's like it gets lost. You don't see it until you have it in person. Like I spent so much time on the line work.
That's my favorite one. That's the one that if you just put
you.
a WWE in the corner and a $1.25, it looks like a comic book cover for me.
Thanks, man.
It really resonates, and I love that it's the one in the show.
Yeah.
I love this for you. I want more for you. You're awesome.
Thank you, man.
I would be remiss. This is the rapid fire portion of the program.
Okay.
The biggest lesson you learned in comic school.
The biggest lesson I learned was the one I said before. If you miss a deadline, doesn't matter how good you are, you're worthless.
One neat trick about drawing comics that you wouldn't know.
One neat trick about. I would say that there's a lot more work than meets the eye. It's a lot of work and tight deadlines, very tight deadlines and a lot of work.
Image or character that always stays with you whenever you're working.
Batman. Anything Jim Lee Batman. I mean, the Jim Lee Hush run, he's one of my idols. He's one of the reasons I wanted to go to comic school. I'd probably say like, the second printing of the first Hush issue where he's like a profile of him standing on a gargoyle.
Yeah. I have the Funko Pop of that, actually.
Yeah.
Hardest thing you ever drawn?
The next thing I draw.
I like that. One wrestler you really hope to draw?
Ivar, because he's a friend.
Okay. I like that.
He's a friend, and he's one of the nicest, most genuine, sweetest, down-to-earth people you'll ever hope to meet. And I
missed him on the Indies, but I heard he's a great guy.
I'm so happy for his success, and I feel so bad for him, what he's going through now. But I would say him and Bronson. Bronson also is just a great guy. So us bigger guys, not that I'm like tall like them, but us beefy guys, we all got to stick together. I have a type, I guess. I don't. But
one character you wish to draw?
I gotta go Yoda or Batman. I mean, or somebody from Planet of the Apes. I'll go with Yoda. I like.
You
Yoda.
you just did a Planet of the Apes thing, and it got the eye of like one of the main cast people, right?
Yeah. So I've done a few of them, and I'm friendly. Apparently, I became friendly with a few of them, which again, it's the beauty of social media, right? Like, if I was doing this in the 70s, the 80s, like I can never say like I was talking to these people. So, but if you mean I'm assuming you mean in an official license capacity.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, then Apes, Yoda, or Batman.
Will you be at Fanatics Fest?
I don't know. I don't.
Well, if you are, let me know.
There's a chance. I'll put it this way. I'll probably be there one way or another.
Okay.
No, depending. I don't know what capacity it's in. They've got a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm probably the least of the worries. I'll just say I'm busy with a lot of stuff I'm working on. So if I'm not there, it's for the right reasons. But I think I will attend one way or another, and I'm super excited because they're doing a lot of great things, and I'm forever indebted to them.
Well, let me know, because for me, for the Fanatics Fest, the draw is actually you.
Wow, man.
Going to be there. Rhea Ripley, of course, Cody Rhodes, our champion, but the draw for me is you. And I really appreciate you going out of your way and saying, I want to do your show. I want to talk. At one point, you were going to pop the announcement here, and just that alone meant the world to me. And I'm so happy we got to do this and get to know you at a different level. I'm rooting for you. Whatever run comes out of this, I know you're going to crush it. Hearing your work ethic tells me that you're going to be just fine. And I love that. And where can everybody catch you on the socials?
Yeah, man. I try to keep it simple. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever they call it now. I don't know until it changes its name again. I think TikTok, Maz Adams Art. That's M-A-Z Adams. I mean, he's got the spelling right up here, right on this side.
Yeah.
So it's Maz Adams Art, basically. And I mean, go to WWE Shop. If you just search Maz, or if you go to fanatics.com and search Maz, you'll see whatever art is available. There's regular versions, there's artist signed versions, and who knows? Maybe you'll even see my signature with Stone Cold's or with Rhea Ripley's or with Seth Rollins. So keep your eyes peeled, because if they are, I'd assume they'd probably sell fast.
Yeah, I mean, the Ripley and the Austin, those are the ones that got that giant Fanatics almost gone. And when Fanatics puts that on an item, they mean it. Even if they can print a new one, it's almost gone. So, you know, brother, thank you so much for doing this. It was awesome. Keep at it. The following conversation has been scheduled for one fall. This has been The Voice, Cheyenne Ortiz.